everyone, and welcome to our webinar, How to Get Your Mojo Back and Unlock the Secrets to Feeling Fabulous After 40. Really excited about sharing this webinar with you. So, first of all, who are we? So, my name's Sarah Brenchley. I'm the funny looking lady on the right-hand side of that photograph. I'm a degree qualified naturopath. I've also got qualifications in herbal medicine, in nutrition, massage and yoga. I'm a certified NLP practitioner and life coach. And I'm currently studying for a master's in human nutrition at Deakin University, which I absolutely love, taking forever, but never mind. And I also run an online practice doing private coaching and courses. I've been in clinical practice for a number of years, and I've also taught and been the head of department at Natural Medicine College in Auckland as well. Andrea is my wonderful business partner, is a qualified fitness professional. She's a Meno fitness coach, so she was specifically trained in exercise for women going through menopause, and she also runs her own fitness studio specifically for women, which she's been doing for quite a long time. So together we created Hormone Empowerment because we were working individually with women who were going through perimenopause in their 40s, having all these horrendous symptoms, and we were both working with them through their nutrition, through their lifestyle, and obviously Andrea with her fitness. And we realized that actually if we came together and shared our expertise and created an online program, we could actually help a lot more women who were really stuck, even though they actually knew what they needed to do. They really just needed a guide and someone to hold their hand and hold them accountable. So that's really why we created Hormone Empowerment. So what I'm going to talk to you today in our webinar is about what is menopause, what's perimenopause, the symptoms of perimenopause and menopause, because I find a lot of women aren't too sure if the symptoms that they're feeling, is it because of perimenopause or are they going mad? You're not going mad, it probably is. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about hormones and cycles so that you can start to understand what's going on for you. What are the contributing factors to hormone imbalance and also aspects of hormonal health and balance? So there's a reason why you might be feeling flat and bloaty and yuck, and so I'm going to give you some of the things you have to take into account in order to get that mojo back and feel fabulous. Then I'm going to give you some top tips for hormone balance, and then at the end I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our program, which is a 12-week 90 days to making menopause easy online program where we're seeing some fantastic results. So I'll talk to you about that at the end of the webinar too. So let's crack on. Just going to start with some facts about menopause. So by the year 2025, the World Health Organization estimates that there's going to be about 1.1 billion women worldwide that will be aged over 50. So therefore, they're going to be postmenopausal. So getting your health right in your 30s and your 40s is so important for when you're then in your 50s. The thing to know is that menopause is a transition. It's not a disease. And so perimenopause is really the bit before, and it can start as early as your 30s, the perimenopause part. And most people will experience different symptoms. It's really unique to each person. So you're not losing your marbles. You really are going through a transition, and that's when we can get all these really funny symptoms. So some women might have hot flushes, but there are some women that get cold flushes. So it really is different according to you. You can still have a wonderful sex life. It doesn't matter. So there are things that can happen that can make sex more challenging, but if you know that periods are going to stop, yay, it could actually make your sex life even better. And there are ways around that to help with pain or with the discomfort that can sometimes come with perimenopause. And Andrea and I can talk to you about that as well. Just be clear that your body will still produce hormones. So I'm going to talk to you about the hormones that are involved. Estrogen and progesterone and testosterone all drop, but they don't just suddenly stop. It's not like you don't make estrogen and you don't make progesterone. Your body still makes it in other parts of your body because they're all so important and they have different functions. It's just that they become lower and your reproductive system stops producing them because you no longer need to have babies. So the other thing to know is that most women will put weight on during this time, and there's really, it's not that there's nothing you can do about it, but it is part of the change. So there was a study done in 2017 that showed that on average, most women will put on between 2 and 5 kilograms. Diet's the same, exercise is the same. Sometimes you might even go on a real diet and you might exercise even more than ever, but the weight won't shift, and it's because of hormones. So be aware that that does happen. And sometimes you kind of got to go with the flow, but there are things that you can do to make sure that you're not eating the wrong types of food or exercising in the wrong way for you at the time based on what's happening with your hormones. Brain fog is really common, and stress plays a huge role in this, and that's because cortisol, the stress hormone, will affect those estrogen, progesterone, testosterone hormones. You can also still get pregnant whilst you're perimenopause. It's not until you are postmenopausal that you know that you can be safe, and I'll explain what that means in a minute too. What can happen as well with weight is it doesn't matter if you're pear-shaped, it doesn't matter if you're straight, you might still put weight on your belly, having never had any weight on your belly. It certainly happened to me. I'm pear-shaped and I always had a flat tummy and just had fat on my butt and thighs, and then all of a sudden I got belly fat. Never had that before, and again, that's really common. But as I said, with specific lifestyle, specific nutrition, you can reduce that. It's harder if you are already overweight or obese prior, because you're just going to kind of keep piling it on, but we can do something about it. So there is something called the menopause myth that I just want to talk about, and that's that even though menopause, perimenopause can affect our health and can affect our mood and our well-being, it is not a disease. And a lot of pregnancy, puberty, menopause can get treated like a disease by the medical establishment. It's not a disease. It doesn't mean that your body is failing you, and it doesn't mean that you're getting old. It is just a transition. It is a beginning, and Andrea and I truly believe that it is also an opportunity. So think of this as being a really exciting opportunity to make some changes. So what is menopause and when does it occur? So let's start with menopause itself. Menopause is defined as being when your periods stop after 12 months. So if you haven't had a period for 7 months, then you're not menopausal, you are considered perimenopausal. But after 12 months, if you have not had any periods whatsoever, then you're technically menopausal. So post-menopause is actually the day after 12 months. So if you haven't had a period for, say, 12 months and 2 days, you're then post-menopausal. It's really after the age of 51. That's an average, because usually 51 is when most women have had the menopause. That's not typical. So if you're 53 and you haven't had those 12 months of no periods, that doesn't make any difference. Everyone's different. So perimenopause is usually between 40 to 51 years old, give or take. And that, as I said, is the time before the stopping of the period. So if you've not had your period for 9 months, you're still technically perimenopausal. So premature menopause usually happens before you're 40, and premature is usually because of something that's happened. So it might be that you've had to have a hysterectomy, or because you've had severe problems with your uterus or your ovaries. That could be fibroids, it could be cancer, it might be that you've had radiation, and therefore that has meant that you've gone into that menopause a bit more quickly because you're not ovulating anymore, because the ovaries were taken away or got damaged with the radiation. Certain medications might mean that you are prematurely menopausal as well. So there's lots of different reasons, but usually premature menopause doesn't happen naturally. There's usually a reason for it, a disease or a medication or some kind of trauma or surgery that's occurred. So what happens in menopause is that your various things happen. So your uterus kind of thins out a little bit more, which is why you can get a bit dry. You might have some irregular bleeding, so you're not bleeding all the time, and that's because the lining is kind of starting to shed, because it's degrading, because it's not needed for that for having a baby anymore. So we're going to talk now a little bit about what are the symptoms and how that relates. So the top symptoms are things like hot flushes, although I did say some women can have cold flushes, night sweats, sleeping problems, really common, fatigue, low energy, Mood swings, so you might be depressed, you might have anxiety, you might be up and down all the time, you might burst into tears. It's a bit like puberty all over again. Low libido is really common. Weight gain, as I said, is really common. Between 2 and 5 kilograms of weight gain is really common. Digestive issues as well, so I'll talk a little bit about that later. Headaches and migraines, you might suddenly get a migraine for the first time when you're 40, which is what happened to me. Sore joints are really common. Painful sex, so that's because the lining of the vagina starts to kind of degrade and thin. UTIs, which is your basically bladder infections, urinary tract infections, that are really common, and that's because estrogen plays a role in making the mucus in your cervix, and that mucus is a specific pH which actually protects us from yeast and bacteria. And when our estrogen drops, the mucus changes, and so we become more at risk of getting urinary tract infections, and also things like thrush and bacterial vaginosis become more common too. Incontinence as well, because of what can happen, estrogen affects our joints, and so we can end up having problems with our pelvic floor. We start to become itchy. There's a relationship between estrogen and histamine. And also I've had a couple of women that I've worked with who suddenly lose their identity. They lose motivation. They've forgotten who they are, and that can be really common as well. And that's because estrogen has a relationship with some brain chemicals like serotonin, for example. So all of those symptoms are to do with specific hormones either being too high or dropping really low, and so there's something we can do about that. About 80% of people will have symptoms, so it's really common, and you are absolutely not alone. So let's talk a little bit about cycles. So most women have a cycle of anywhere between 28 and 35 days. You're bleeding, your period is 7 days, and actually it's a really insignificant event. It's the rest of the time in your cycle that's actually where all the exciting things happen. So the reason why you might have lost your mojo and you might feel flat and fat and bloaty and sad and just bleh is because of our hormones. So before we go through perimenopause, when we've just got an ordinary cycle, you'll see there are 2 hormones. So there's actually more hormones than this, but estrogen and progesterone are the 2 main hormones that we're going to talk about. So the red line is progesterone, the blue line is estrogen. So what happens is that on our first day of our period, estrogen starts to rise, and when it hits a peak, it will then encourage us to ovulate, which is when the egg pops out of the ovary, and it leaves damage on the ovary wall, and that damage on the ovary wall starts to produce progesterone, and progesterone is produced to maintain a pregnancy. And so you can see estrogen rises and it dips a little bit, then when you ovulate, and then it kind of comes back up again, and it was the second half of your cycle where progesterone rises, and then it comes down, both come down just before you have your period, and that can sometimes be why you're a bit moody or you're a bit weepy around the day before or the day after your period starts. When we are perimenopause, so this is the period where it's the transition leading up to the cessation of our periods, our hormones can be all over the place. So what usually happens is estrogen is up and down and up and down, and progesterone declines slowly over a period of time. And then what you end up with is this gap between estrogen and progesterone. And estrogen and progesterone have a really lovely relationship where they need to be kind of equal. And if you have high amounts of estrogen in comparison to progesterone, then we can end up with weight gain, moods, low energy, all sorts of really weird symptoms, really heavy periods, cramping, sore breasts, all sorts of things. So it's not necessarily that you've got high amounts of estrogen. It might be that estrogen is perfectly normal amount, but because progesterone has dropped, you've ended up with this imbalance between the 2. Postmenopause, there's usually a bit of a flat line, but these are just hormones that are made in our ovaries. So progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone are all made in our ovaries, and they're all involved in ovulation, which is the releasing of an egg that hopefully, or not hopefully, will become a baby. So because we get to a point where our body thinks we don't need to reproduce anymore, that's why we stop producing estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, and some other hormones as well. But estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone are really important hormones that our body needs for other functions. So those hormones are still made elsewhere in our body. They're made in our adrenal glands, which actually make our stress hormones. They're made in our brain. They're made in our fat cells. So don't think that that's it, you just lost all your hormones. And why that's important is because if we are highly stressed, our adrenals will focus on making more stress hormone and not enough of the estrogen and progesterone and testosterone that we need in order just to thrive. So it's really important that we look at all of these other aspects that can then affect the balance of those hormones made elsewhere in our body when our ovaries stop making them, or our reproductive system stop making them. And that's really key. So things to be aware of. These are the things that, are really important for hormonal balance. I'm just trying to move myself out of the way. So our hormones are at the top. Now, I'll talk about xenoestrogens and thyroid function in a minute. I'm going to start with mindset, because mindset's really important. If we're really aware about how we think about ourselves, whether we think that we're okay, makes a huge difference to our health and well-being. I can't tell you how important that is. If we're aware of what we are doing to our bodies, are we taking care of ourselves because of the way we live and the food that we eat, then that makes a real change, because we then are aware we can make different plan for what we're going to do. So we'll have different thoughts, different actions. It means that our outcomes are different, and that gives us a better life. So mindset is absolutely key. So you need to be thinking about how do you feel about yourself? How do you feel about yourself in this period of time, in this transition? This is an opportunity to get the life that you want. So it's really important that you do journaling and that you really think about, do you love yourself? Do you value yourself? And therefore the things that you are doing in your life, the food that you eat, the movement that you do with your body, the self-care, does that show that you care about yourself or not? And that's massively important. It really is. You can go so far with exercise and with diet, but if you really don't deal with what's in your head and the thoughts that you have about yourself, you're really not going to get the results that you really could get. And if you really want your mojo back and you want to feel fabulous, you have to do some work on your thoughts and your patterns of thinking and your beliefs. So exercise is also really important. So exercise is important because it strengthens bones, it builds muscle, and testosterone is made in our muscles. So when we're working out, we're actually going to make more testosterone, which gives us our oomph and our drive. It also helps to balance out estrogen, and it increases our happy brain chemicals like serotonin and dopamine. But it's really important, it's the right amount and it's the right type. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on. So if you are doing too much high intensity interval training, or you're running every single day, or you're doing CrossFit every single day, it could be too much for you, because it can increase cortisol in the body. And when we have too much cortisol in the body, it can mean that we put weight on and we keep the weight, because the body thinks that we are likely to starve to death, or there's something terrible happening, and therefore it holds on to fat and it won't allow us to lose fat. So it might be that if you're working hard, really exercising and not losing the weight, could be that you're exercising too much in the wrong form as well. So eventually too much cortisol can make you feel really flat and miserable and exhausted, and it will help put weight on for you. So it's really important that you exercise the right way. Nutrition and our diet, the food that we eat, is also massive. Okay, so a balanced diet is really important because it will provide all of the nutrients we need to make hormones. So for example, vitamin B6 is required to make progesterone. So if you're not in the diet that's got B6 in it, for whatever reason, you're starving yourself, or you're doing a specific type of diet because you want to lose weight and feel great, then you might actually be doing yourself a disservice. Balanced also means having enough protein, fat, and carbohydrates. And women are really good at eating carbohydrates, but we're generally not very good at eating enough fat our hormones, estrogen and progesterone, testosterone, even cortisol, are made from fat. They're made from cholesterol. So we need to make sure that we've got enough in our diet. So don't be scared of fat. And part of our program is teaching you about what are the right kinds of fat, what are the kind of fat you should be eating and how much. It's also really important that you're eating enough protein. So if we're not eating enough protein, then that can mean that you can be really tired, because protein is required. It's basically the building block of our body. So it can affect whether we've got the brain chemicals we need that can help us give us energy, or whether we've got the brain chemicals to make us feel happy. We can end up with sore joints. So it's cravings. Sometimes if you're craving food, it's actually because you're not getting enough protein. So getting a balance of your fats, proteins and carbohydrates is really important, and the right forms as well. The quality is really important. The other thing is food intolerances. So we can become more at risk of getting food intolerances in our 40s, particularly if you kind of bashed yourself with the wrong type of foods when you were younger. It can really catch up with you in your 40s. So that's really important to understand what's going on, what might you be intolerant to, and how to get that checked out, because that can also affect your skin. It will affect your mood, it will affect your energy, it can be exacerbating the pain and inflammation in your body. And so that's really important that you have a look at that and deal with that. It can also mean that you put weight on as well. Blood sugar is really important. So if you're having lots of refined carbohydrates, you might have real peaks of glucose in your blood, and then you'll have a crash. So it might be that you have a bit of energy and then you crash afterwards, and so it's that 3 o'clock slump. So it's really important that we address that too. And what can happen is if you're having too much sugary foods, and that can be like your cakes and your muffins to get you through, then if you're not exercising to balance that out, then that means that's got to be stored. And so that will be stored as fat, which might be another reason why you're feeling kind of a bit fat and bloating. So again, getting that blood sugar level balanced is really important. And if we've got too much insulin being pumped out in order to get the glucose in the cells, that also has ramifications for our health down the line. And so that will definitely lead to fatigue, and it can lead to diabetes, and it will also lead to obesity and all sorts of like heart health problems. High blood pressure is really important that we deal with that. Microbiome. So the microbiome, there's bacteria all over our bodies, on our skin, everywhere. There's nowhere that's really sterile, but our gut is where we house most of our bacteria, and that's really important for hormone health, because if you have the wrong type of bacteria, they can actually pull apart estrogen or put estrogen back together again and get it to recycle around your body. So it's like your body's got more estrogen than it needs, because it was actually trying to be removed. So our liver actually pulls estrogen apart, and certain naughty gut bacteria put estrogen back together again. So having a really good balance of bacteria is really important. And there's also links between the kind of bacteria you've got in your gut and obesity. So certain bacteria will make us put weight on, certain bacteria will make us crave certain foods, and certain bacteria has also been linked to anxiety and depression. So getting the right gut bacteria is hugely important. Fiber is really important. So I'm going to talk about fiber and liver health together, because what happens is the liver breaks down lots of things when the body decides we don't need them anymore, or perhaps they're not so good for us. So that includes food, it includes medication, it includes cholesterol, and it includes alcohol, and it includes our hormones. So estrogen, as an example, goes to our liver, and then it gets pulled apart in our liver, and then we remove it. And we remove it by the liver produces something called bile, and a lot of the breakdown products, estrogen, alcohol, whatever, all go into the bile. The bile is then squirted out by the gallbladder into our intestines, and then we poo that out along with everything else. And so why that's important is fiber helps to kind of, it's like a bit like a broom that cleans out the gut and out your bum. And it's really important, because if we're constipated, if we don't have enough fiber, then that means that it's not being removed. So our liver's producing the bile, the estrogen is in the bile, and then it sits in the colon, in our big intestine, and isn't removed. And what can happen is that it can get reabsorbed, or the bad bacteria is there and it puts estrogen back together again, and then it gets absorbed, and then it can cause real problems with our health. So it's really important that we're having enough fiber that will help be that room through our gut, and also a lot of fiber is food for our good bacteria as well. So fiber is really important, and works that with how the liver works as a detoxifying organ. So poo is part of our detoxification, as is our breath, as is our sweat, and as when we urinate too. So it's all of it's really important. If we can detoxify naturally, then we should remove all of the wastes, including the hormones we no longer want. So as I said, stress is also massive. We produce cortisol when we're really stressed, which is our chronic stress hormone. So what that means is our body is prepared for action. So adrenaline is about the fight or flight or freeze, and cortisol is about surviving the storm. Definitely not about rest and repair. So what can happen is that when we're chronically stressed, when we're producing lots and lots of cortisol, our body will decide it's going to produce cortisol as a priority, and estrogen, progesterone, and eventually testosterone all kind of go and sit over there and have to wait their turn. So that can mean that you end up with low hormones. It can make you feel wired but tired. It means you can have sleep problems, mood problems, you're putting weight on. It can mean that you're more at risk of joint injuries, because estrogen, progesterone, testosterone all have a role to play in those things. So you have to deal with this stress. It's massive when it comes to our hormone health and our hormonal balance. Xenoestrogens at the top, that's really foreign estrogens, and that can be in our environment. So that's things like perfumes, chemicals in our environment. Those horrible pump plastic water bottles are terrible because that has BPA in it, and BPA is actually a synthetic estrogen that was actually made for hormone replacement therapy decades back, and then when they decided that they didn't need it anymore because something else had come along, they, for whatever reason, decided to put it into plastic bottles instead. So do not drink out plastic water bottles. And then thyroid function is really important too. So our thyroid is a gland that's actually in our throat. And when that doesn't work properly, that has a knock-on effect with our hormones. So particularly if your thyroid is under-functioning, it will mean that that will affect estrogen, progesterone, and your periods and your cycles. You'll put weight on, it can make you tired, it can make you depressed. So we definitely have to check that your thyroid is functioning properly as well, because of the fact that all of that feeling yuck and flat and miserable can be because your thyroid's not functioning properly. But as I said, it has a knock-on effect to all those other hormones, because all of the hormones, they all talk together. They're basically chemical messengers. That's what they are in the body. And so what happens is when one is affected or has a problem, it's like the dominoes, and it affects all of the other hormones too. So that's why it's really important to kind of have a look at those aspects and make sure that you're working in those aspects and getting them balanced. So my tips to get your mojo back. So number one is to get your hormones tested. I can't tell you how important it is. It would be like taking a car to a garage and saying to the mechanic, fix my car, but don't assess it, just fix it. Well, you can't fix something you don't assess. You say you have to know what you're dealing with. So you can get a blood test from your GP. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but we also have what are called functional tests, urine tests, that also look at the breakdown products of those hormones too. And then if you know that you're high estrogen, low progesterone, there are lots of things that you can do about that, things that you might need to change or tweak or to bring into your diet or bring into your life. So number one, get your hormones tested, get your thyroid tested, really important, get your glucose tested, get your liver function tested. You know, check your B vitamins, check your iron, because iron is really important. If you're getting infections, if you're getting colds, if you're really tired and cold, it could possibly be because your iron's low, which is really common when you've got periods as well, if you're bleeding, particularly if you're bleeding heavily. Eating a balanced diet. So remember, make sure you're eating enough protein, fat, carbohydrate. Make sure you're eating enough vegetables and fruits. You should be eating two pieces of fruit and at least 3 to 5 vegetables a day. At least 3, preferably 5. 7 would be even better. And make sure you're eating vegetables or fruit of lots of different colors. Eat seasonally and change it up. Don't have the same breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. Stabilize those blood sugar levels. Be really careful that you're not eating lots of muffins and chocolates and bread, pasta, pies. Look at what you're eating, because that could be why, you know, you've got a bit of energy and then you're crashing. Love your liver. Look after your liver. So you need the B vitamins for your liver. You need to not be drinking too much alcohol. If we're drinking lots of alcohol, then our body will prioritize alcohol and get that out of your body rather than deal with your hormones. So if you're having hot flushes, if you're getting migraines, look at what you're drinking. Are you having too much alcohol? Be really honest. Find another way of rewarding yourself or getting through the day. Make sure you're eating enough fiber. So fiber is things like grains, whole grains, not a muffin, even if it's got a whole grain muffin. So your whole grains, your beans and pulses and legumes, your vegetables, particularly the peelings, the skin of vegetables and fruit, really important. Look after your gut health. Keep calm. Deal with stress. Can't tell you how important that is. So find a way to manage your stress. Find a space, a time for you where it's just about you, and do something that gives you joy, that makes you happy, that makes you laugh. Sleep is hugely, hugely important. For lots of reasons. It helps obviously with energy. It helps us lose weight because melatonin helps us to make what's called brown fat, which in turn helps us lose our white fat. So sleeping is really important. And if you have got your Wi-Fi on, if you're on your computer at 10 o'clock at night and then trying to go to sleep, it might be that that's actually affecting your sleep, and then that actually affects your cortisol, which then has a knock-on effect with other things too. Watch out for your environment. Make sure that you use natural products as much as possible, that you're not surrounding yourself by chemicals too much. It's really hard to not do that. But look for things like parabens, look for things like BPA. If it says BPA free, it doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't have another BP type product, which will not be good for us either. You know, those synthetic perfumes are not great. Journal. Write about, you know, how you want to feel. What is your vision for your future? What kind of life do you want for the next, 40 years? If you're 40 now, you've got another 40, 50, 60 years to go. What do you want to see happen? Do a vision board on what it is you want. What are you prepared to let go of in order to get the life that you want? And start journaling. Herbs and supplements. So when we know what your test results are, there are loads of herbs and supplements that you can do in order to help balance out those hormones. And then exercise correctly. Now, I'm not an expert in fitness. I'm not very good at doing it, to be honest. This is Andrea's area of expertise, but basically there's a way of exercising correctly for you. And so hormones is really important, because it might be that if you've got high amounts of estrogen, we need to change the way you exercise. If you've got low progesterone, low estrogen, it might be because you've got high amounts of cortisol. You need much more relaxation, restorative type exercise, not the CrossFit high intensity exercise. So that exercise will change dependent on your situation. And then the rest is really important. So it's important that you might do some specific type of high intensity interval training, but then you need to have days where you might just go for a walk, or you might just go for a gentle swim, or you might do something like Pilates or yoga or Qigong. So that's really important too. So strength training is important. Getting your heart pumping is really important, and also making sure that you're doing some kind of balance and flexibility is important as well. So what I want to do now, hopefully you've got some tips there that you can use that might help you get that mojo back. So I want to talk to you a little bit about our 12-week online program, which will fill any gaps that you have, and all the things that I've talked about, those aspects we cover on our program. So first of all, it's called Hormone Empowerment, 12 weeks to menopause made easy. You will learn about the foundations of nutrition. You will learn all about fats, carbohydrate, protein, essential fatty acids, fiber, water, alcohol, how to read labels, all sorts of things that will help really get your diet back on track. And I promise you, even if you think your diet's pretty good, I know you will learn something. And we aren't doing any fad diets. We're just trying to get you to eat so that you feel good. And it's about how you feel. So getting you back in tune with how you feel and what foods resonate with you. We teach you about what the research says about longevity and how to have a good quality of life. We look at specific nutrients, foods and diets that can help to balance hormones. We talk about the role of the gut and digestion, how to improve your absorption of nutrients and excretion. I talk about enzymes, probiotics, prebiotics, fermented foods and fiber, and also how to test for those food intolerances, which might be the reason why you just feel bleh. The role of the liver and detoxification in hormonal balance, and practical tips on how to support the liver. You'll also learn a bit more about those hormones that are involved in perimenopause. So I've kind of touched on that. So you'll learn far more about them and what their role is, what happens to them during perimenopause, and how this specifically relates to the signs and symptoms that you might be experiencing. I'm going to teach you how to chart your cycle so that you can see exactly what's happening with your estrogen, progesterone, and when you are or not ovulating. I'm going to teach you all about the blood tests and what blood tests you could get, and these are the ones that you get from your GP. And also some functional tests. So the Dutch test, which is a dried urine test, we use a wet urine test called the Eve test, and we'll teach you about what those results mean. I'm going to teach you about the circadian rhythm. So this is our internal clock and how this relates to your digestive system, weight, abdominal fat, sleep, and energy. You're going to learn about the importance of sleep, how this influences your hormones and maybe some of the symptoms that you're feeling, including weight gain. And you'll get practical tips on how to get a good night's sleep. I'll talk to you about stress and how stress influences our hormones and the consequences of not managing stress properly. And I'll give you some stress management techniques. So I'll teach you how I'll teach you some breathing techniques. I'll teach you yoga. I teach you some mindfulness techniques and some yoga relaxation as well. I also talked to you about the importance of mindset. So I said at the beginning, this is kind of like the golden key that opens the door. So we talk about your thoughts at this time of your life and practical ways to improve it. So that's included mindset about food, your relationship with food, food choices, mindful eating. We also have a mindset manual that we walk you through, which is really about how you feel about your life and yourself and what you want and how are you going to change so that you get the life you want. So we spend an awful lot of time on that as well. The right type of exercise for hormone, plus the 3 biggest exercise mistakes that could possibly be making you put weight on and not lose it. The top secrets to reducing cellulite and lower body fat, how to shift your metabolism into a fat burning mode with exercise that's specific to you, and how to enhance your pelvic floor, which is really important for incontinence and pelvic organ prolapse. And also if your pelvic floor is tighter, you'll have better sex too. So you'll learn about that. So there are 2 options. There's a self-guided option and also our coached program. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the differences between the 2. So with the self-guided, you get weekly workout videos and e-manuals. So on we have a website, so you'll go to the members area and there's basically something like 16 different workout videos and you get a manual. You get the mindset manual. There's something like 58, 60 videos on nutrition, hormones, lifestyle, plus handouts. You get a recipe book. You are part of our private Facebook group where we do lots of extra things in there. So there might be some bonus videos that we put up. We have chats. We put handouts or extra resources that we find, and it's where we support each other and give each other's virtual hugs and inspire each other, and we show each other, you know, what foods we're eating and how we're getting on as well. So it's such a cool group to be part of. You also get optional testing like the Eve test, herbs and supplements that are individually prescribed to you. So that's completely optional. There's no pressure. You pay extra for that. We don't make our own products, so it's really just a conversation with me if there's something that you really want, having learned something. If you're on the coached program, then you get all of that, plus you get a full naturopathic health evaluation and nutritional analysis with me. So I use something called FoodWorks, which is a software used in universities and by clinical nutritionists and dietitians that basically looks at your weekly diet and will tell you exactly what your intake is like. Are you having too much carbohydrate? Are you eating enough fiber? Are you drinking enough water? Are you eating those B vitamins that you need in order to make the hormones that you need? And I'll give you lots of goals and recommendations on how to get your diet really good, based on you, what your preferences are, whether you're vegetarian, vegan, celiac, doesn't matter. It's completely unique to you. We offer a hormone test as well. So that the hormone test, the Eve test, is part of the coached package. You get specific individual goals related to your dietary analysis and your health evaluation and whatever it is you want to work on. Plus, we have a group coaching calls every 2 weeks, plus individual calls as well, one-on-one with either Andrew or myself, whenever you want that. Or if you want that, it's completely optional. Plus, as part of the e-test, you also get a recipe book and some support and recommendations based on your test results from the people that do the e-test, plus my own recommendations as well. So you get a lot. So you will achieve a clear understanding of how your body works, why you are experiencing these changes and these signs and these symptoms, and also what you can do about it. You will get a change in how you feel and see about yourself. The mindset's massive. We've seen huge changes with some of our ladies on how they think about themselves and what they're willing to put up with and what they're not willing to put up with anymore. You'll hopefully get an elimination or reduction in all, if not at least some of your perimenopausal symptoms. So most of the women will see massive change. Sometimes there might be 1 or 2 things that are still hanging on. So then you work with me after the program. So it's not like 12 weeks, that's it, goodbye. You still work with us and we support you, and it might take a bit longer than 3 months. This is really about giving you the tools to make the changes, but it's a journey. It's not 3 months, then goodbye. You will feel empowered to be able to start making decisions based on the information that you've got. You will know what you need to do and how you can improve your life. You'll definitely feel part of a fantastic community of women, and you will know that you are not alone in your experience. The women in our groups are awesome. They share, they support, they're just absolutely fantastic. So you will be part of an amazing community of women. And you will feel supported, you will feel safe and listened to, and you will have your questions answered, I promise. So I'll talk about that. If you go to our shop on our website, then you'll get more information about the courses. So that the coached and the self-guided, there are weekly payment plans, there are monthly payment plans, and you can pay in full as well. I think the self-guided works out something like $25 a week, which is absolute bargain. But we have other options too. So there is an ebook that kind of follows on and goes into a lot more detail of this webinar. So it used to be called How to Lose Weight During Perimenopause. We're actually updating that now. So it's called How to Get Your Mojo Back and Unlock the Secrets to Feeling Fabulous and Losing Weight After 40. So go to the shop. The cover will be changing fairly soon, but the content is the same. We've actually improved it. And then there's also the Eve test. So again, you go to the shop on our website and we have the Eve test for $249. So you could just go and get the urine test and you'll get a report back and a recipe book and guidelines as what to do with the results. So that's something that you can do separately to being on the program. And then the other thing that I really would love it if you did was to come and join our amazing women, our community of amazing women. So we have a private Facebook group called 40 and Fabulous. The link is there, but you go to Facebook and put 40 plus and fabulous. That's the photograph that you should get. So Andrew and I are there waiting for you. Come and join us. The private Facebook group's free. So there's 2, when you're doing the programs, you're in a different Facebook group, but this is a free Facebook group for everybody. And we've got yoga classes, we've had Pilates classes, we have videos, we have all sorts of things going on in there and challenges and everything. So it's a fantastic space to come and share and be supported, ask questions, and it's really fun. We're doing lots of fun things in there. So please come and join our Facebook group as well if you're interested. So I'm going to finish with this quote by Brené Brown. I love Brené Brown. And she says, people may call what happens at midlife a crisis, but it's not. It's an unraveling. It's a time when you feel a desperate pull to live the life you want to live, not the one you are supposed to live. The unraveling is a time when you are challenged by the universe to let go of what you think you are supposed to be and to embrace who you really are. So thank you so much for your time. Please come and join us either at the Facebook group or come and do our programs. We really want to help you. Come and be the person you are meant to be. Get your mojo back, start to feel fabulous again, and let us help you make menopause easy. Take care, guys, and thank you for your time.